Hey everyone, it's Health and Hope with Helen. Tonight I wanted to talk briefly about trying new things and how I think it's good for your health. I'm somebody who has always been somewhat adventurous. You could say I probably get bored every 2 to 3 years. You're like, Helen, that doesn't sound very stable. To some, it might not be. I know like a lot of people stay in the same career 20, 30, 35 years and they're completely content with that. However, I have never been one of those people. I have tried numerous jobs, and I just believe like from every single thing that I've tried different, I've learned so many different things just by new careers, having different bosses, getting to work with all sorts of people. I mean, let me just start from the beginning. So, my first job would have been when I was 14. I decided that I needed to earn some extra money because back then, my parents would maybe give you $5 here or $10 there, but it's not like how I am with my child, like, here you go, which was ridiculous. But I keep telling him, I'm like, when you turn 16, you're going to go get a job because I think that's so important. So here I am at 14, and I'm like, I need a job. So I go over to the elementary school that I worked at, that I went to school at, and I said, hey, can I have a job? I'll do anything. And so they're like, well, we need a janitor. I'm like, awesome. And so they hired me for the janitor position at the age of 14. And I just remember how much fun it was going back into the old classrooms where I learned and where I grew up, getting to vacuum and clean the desks. And, I would sit there and I'd stroll that little cart around with my big swig and my Cheetos. And, it just made me feel so important. So that was my first little stint with a job. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then right when I got close to being about 16 years old, in fact, I just turned 16 in that May, and then it was like June, it was summertime, and one of my brother's friends called from the movie theater up at the mall, which was the place to work because you got to work up there with all the kids from both the high schools in town, and it was boys and girls, and it was social. And he called and he was just like, hey, is your brother there? Because he was going to call and hire my brother. My brother happened to be away that summer. I think he was like at a football camp or something. I don't know. I was like, no. And he's just like, okay, well, Helen, do you want a job? And I was like, yeah, I do. And so my brother to this day still says, you took my job at the movie theater. It was the funnest job ever. You got to work, like I just said, with so many different people. You got to be up there in the mall where they were in the heart of everything. And the movie theater was in the food court. So literally in between shows, we would just sit there and we'd run up and down the aisle. I know this sounds ridiculous. But we did. We would run around. We'd eat all the popcorn. We'd eat all the candy because we got a discount. We would go to all the little places like that were by the movie theater. So we'd go to Al's Diner and get gravy fries. We'd go over to Hot Dog on a Stick and get those like yummy, delicious like cheese dogs. There was a pizza place, sandwich place, ice cream place. I mean, there was everything. I'm surprised, no joke, after everything that I ate on a daily basis, the big tubs of buttery popcorn, that I wasn't like this big. I'm not even kidding you. But I mean, what kid didn't eat a lot? It's like our metabolisms were just going and going and going. But it was so much fun. We got to watch all the movies for free. And I remember the first movie that came out when I had to go start at the theater. That's why they were in a frantic trying to hire somebody. It was Jurassic Park, the first one. And that same summer, Lion King came out. Miss Doubtfire came out that year. So there were so many top sellers, and it was so fun. And so I worked there from 10th grade until my senior year, until I graduated. And I slowly went from concessions to box to, I never made it to management. So But then after that, you graduate, you have to kind of move on. That summer kind of was a summer of just trying to figure things out. So I took a hostess job. I took a little job over at an eye clinic. Thought, okay, maybe I'll try this out. So I was never, ever afraid to try new things. And then I was also kind of like a retail junkie. So like probably right from about 19 on for several years, I worked up at the mall again. So here I was at the movie theater for several years at the mall. Now I'm back at the mall. Like I was a mall rat. So at this point I was working at Claire's Accessories. I was managing there. I worked at a store called J. Jacobs, and I worked at this clothing store called County Seat. If any of you guys know County Seat, I mean, that really ages me, but it was a jean store. It was like the coolest store to work at. I worked at County Seat, and then eventually I ended up becoming a store manager for Motherhood and Maternity. So I was at the mall for years and years and years. But it was a wonderful experience. And again, all of those different stores were different types. You had your jewelry, you had your maternity clothes. I worked in a jeans store. So I was constantly learning new trades, working with new people, having to be under new management. And so I really got to grow in all of those positions. But I just feel like just by putting yourself out there, and I know some people are like, I couldn't do that, or I don't want to do that. I learned so much from that. And then in the interim of that, all of that combined, I was gaining experience because what I truly wanted to do was to become a flight attendant. That's what I wanted to do from the time I was young. My Aunt Cindy worked for a really popular airline, and she lived in Colorado. And when she would come visit and we would be down there visiting, she would show up and she always looked so classy and sharp. She had on her cute little high heels and she was tan with her cute little haircut. And she always gave me a little pair of wings. And I'm like, oh, I want to do that one day. I'm going to do that one day. She got to go to all the exciting places. So what I started doing was after I'd leave my grandma's house, because that's where I was visiting her, I'd head home, I'd get all my friends in the neighborhood together, and I'd be like, we're going to play airplane. And so I would pile the chairs together. I'd start handing out little juice boxes and little snacks, and I'd make them play for hours. It's just like if I had to play teacher with them, they had to play flight attendant with me. So, and it's just funny how God puts those dreams in your heart, because even at a young age, I knew I was just like, oh, I'm going to do this. So here I am, 20, 21, and I'm just like, oh, it's time. I'm going to go do this. But the only thing is I live in a small city where they didn't have flight attendants at that time that were based out of here. So I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to go about this? So I started just researching it, getting into the paper, trying to find out how I could go to open houses, how I could apply, how I could do all this. And lo and behold, God had that plan already set in place. I ended up applying with some major airlines. I ended up getting hired on, and I worked for numerous airlines. So it was just such an awesome experience. My office being in the air and just the challenge in itself, and every day was different. Even though it was the same job, every single day was different. And I was young and I was free, and it was okay to live out of a suitcase and in crash pads. And I didn't have any kids and I wasn't married. And so it was like the perfect time. And honestly, like if you're considering being a flight attendant, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who are married and they have children and it works for them. Just at the time for me, I always viewed it as kind of like, okay, if you were young and free and could just go, that seemed really ideal. Or maybe if you were your children were grown and you were maybe, your husband was retired, maybe that's another phase in your life where you'd maybe want to try to do this. In the interim, it works. However, the schedules can be kind of crazy. It can be kind of hectic, especially if you're trying to commute and whatnot. So anyways, but it was the experience of a lifetime. And I did that for many, many, many years prior to getting married. And so I remember even at one point, I lived in a crash pad with 6 or 7 different flight attendants, and we worked all for different airlines. We were all on different schedules. Some of us were flying international. We had to share one bathroom, so we'd have to sign in on the door to even be able to get into the shower. And we were in Queens, New York, which is even crazier. So you'd hear the sirens going all day, and you'd see the cops on their little bicycles, and our crash pad was hooked up to a Dunkin' Donuts. And we lived with this cool little guy who was from Brooklyn. He was this elderly little man who liked to get up and make pancakes for the flight attendants. He was sweet as pie. So, but just the experiences. See, guys, if you don't ever go out there and try anything new, you're going to miss out on so many experiences, which I just think are good for your overall just health, your well-being, to make memories. And then even after that, I get married and I craved flying. I mean, for the longest time, but my husband was a firefighter, and so it was going to be hard for us both to try to do shift work and for me to commute, and he kind of wanted me to be here local. So I did give up flying, but I did say, you're going to take me on 2 trips a year. He has committed to that and has followed through with that, so that's been a good thing. However, I do sometimes think will I go back to flying after my son is grown? Because after my son was born, it wasn't even an option to go back and fly. I mean, I thought about it a little here and there, but once it came down to it, I was just like, no, I can't do it. You can't leave him, Helen. You can't. So I just knew, even though in my inner soul there's still that you're gonna fly again. So who knows? I guess we'll see. I may end up flying in the midst of doing all the other things that God has placed in my heart. So. But after I chose not to go fly again because I was a mama, I thought, what's the best next thing? And I was like, a coffee shop. Because you're still dealing with all sorts of people, you're still serving, you're still talking, you're dealing with all different people. And I thought, okay, I can do this. So anyways, that's what I do now. I'm a coffee shop owner. I've been doing that for the last 15 years. I am ready to kind of start some new journeys though, I'm ready to, like I said, potentially write a book. I'm trying to do a podcast. I'm getting into doing some of these YouTube videos. I don't know what God has in store. These are all beginning things. Obviously, I need to perfect the craft because I'm not a professional at any of these things yet. However, I'm still trying them. And even if nothing comes out of it, I can still say, hey, I did it. I tried. So, I'm just going to keep pushing along and just whatever God places in my heart, I'm going to just do it afraid because it's just you only get one life. One life. until he takes you home. And I'm like, what am I going to do with it? And being in my 40s, I definitely am like, I don't want to get to the end of my life and say, I wish I would have, could have, and and why didn't I? It's just like, it's not who I am, and just the fact that God has healed me and restored my health, it's like I owe it to Him to get out there and be a world changer, a difference maker, talk about His goodness, glorify His name. And just like I said, He puts all these dreams in our heart and in our bodies and our souls. And if we're just too afraid to act on it, it's just like, then what? We settle. So it's like, I don't want to settle and I don't want to be complacent either. So anyways, hopefully this stirred some of you up, maybe go out there and get an extra job over at Bath and Body Works at the mall. Meet some new people. No, I have no desire to go back up there and work. However, that would be an awesome store to go work for because you'd get all the smelly candles and lotion, and I genuinely think it would be kind of fun. So anyways, God bless everyone. I hope that you have a wonderful evening. Just thanks for listening. Bye.